stand for the invocation by Pastor Brian Allen from the Hillsboro Mennonite Brethren Church, and then we'll remain standing for the flag salute.
Okay. Well, let's pray. Father, we thank you for today and just the beauty that is outside. We see you in it, in creation. And Father, from the very beginning, you gave us as human beings the mandate to lead on this planet and to lead in a way that would honor you and would serve people well. And as this group gathers today, Lord, they have a challenge. They have something that you have given them to lead and to be responsible for. And I just pray that as they do that, Lord, that you would give them great wisdom, that you would give them a spirit of unity, and that, Lord, through that, the things that they have to make decisions on would just be the best possible decisions. That's not always clear right on the front end, and it certainly isn't always agreeable to everyone, Lord, but you have charged leaders with the responsibility of leading, and I pray that you would give them great courage and wisdom and insight. And I pray for all of us today, Lord, that you would give us a real sense of the reality that you love us enough to have died for us. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you bet.
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Pastor.
Have a great day. All right. You're welcome.
Okay, first thing on the agenda, as usual, is Tina.
Okay. The first thing I have are the minutes of April 30.
Do you have a motion to accept the minutes of April 30th?
So moved.
I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 30th, second by Diane. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. We have a couple of early checks.
All right. And these are utilities for out at the park. Number one. And then the second one is for the Jeep being purchased by Lisa Weir.
Somebody wants to buy a used car and it's got the county emblem on the side. It's sitting in a parking lot.
Oh, yeah, with that Taurus. Gotta have 1 million miles on it, don't we, or does it?
125.
Is that Taurus, or is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's I think it's a Sable.
Same,
Yeah.
same thing. Mercury, yeah. My mom bought an old county car, an old Plymouth 87. County road car. But
I
they
have
took-
3
took it
salary
off.
change sheets. Usually those are just magnetic stickers, or like magnets on the side, so I wonder
I don't know, I drove by their parking lot.
It's been on there so long. Maybe that's before they started doing them as a matter.
Oh, I just figured they were trying some kind of glued-on thing that.
So our first salary change is promoted to deputy sheriff, and that is for Kaylin Mills. And they're going from $13.33 to $17.02. And our second one that we have then is a part-time to full-time correction officer, Noah Richter, and he's going from $10.20 to $13.08. And our third one is obviously a new hire, Mason Hines, part-time correction officer, starting off at $12 an hour. That's about the only salary. I really like seeing them being increased on the sheriff's department stuff. Those guys, I think, deserve a little more money.
Yeah,
They really do put their life on the line. You don't know what you're pulling up to at a car in today's world. It's getting rough.
Okay, last week you approved the purchase of the election equipment, and so I have information. If we just pay over 2 years, there is no increased cost. It's just simply pay half the first year and half the second year. If we go to a 3-year, then it is a little bit more. There's one of these for each of you.
So budget-wise, Tina, of course, I personally like paying things as quickly as possible. What would you couldn't pay it at one time in the budget?
No.
Okay, could you pay it half this year and half the next year?
Potentially I could. Yes, I could do that. Do you want the information as the 3-year or not? That's what this is.
Well, you said that it would cost additional if you went to 3 years.
Is that additional cost considered interest?
Well, it's not considered interest. If you look at the bottom, it's 3 payments of $29,547, and it says it's 0% interest. But what they've done is they've reduced our trade-in that they're going to pay us by about a little over $6,000.
Oh,
so if you figure that out, it's about 7.5%. If you're,
Okay.
So my preference would be to pay that in 2 years.
That would be my preference as well.
As long as you can handle that in the budget,
And for this year, and as we prepare for next year, then we just need to make sure that it's in there.
And that's just by consensus. You don't need to vote on that, right?
No, we don't need to vote.
Yeah.
Brent's on his way. He left a message for you that he was running late because he needed to talk to another attorney.
Okay. Okay.
So that'll be half out of the 2018 and half out of 2018 budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we had received a request from Florence Labor Day Committee for a donation for their event. And typically, we have paid out of the transient guest tax towards this. And in 2016 and in 2015, we paid $250 out of transient guest tax. And that is what transient guest tax monies are for. It's for events and tourism.
Sure.
So I just want to see what you all wanted to do.
What all things do we typically pay out of that besides, I know we did this last year, what else do we pay out of that transit tax?
A lot of times, Teresa would pay out of there for like if an event in a small town especially hired an act to come, or she would pay the performance fee out of that. But typically what has been spent is for these kind of small community festivals.
I think it's good to support them.
I do too. Do you know what normally we get from that? I don't have those numbers just off the top of your head. Do you have an idea how much we receiving that tax
I
dollar
can
amount?
get that for you for another meeting. I didn't prepare that for today.
I believe there's several $1,000s.
There's quite a bit of money there, so it's, as far as this decision, it's not.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just saying, because
Mm-hmm.
I know we use it, but I just don't think we use it on a lot of things that I'm accustomed to hearing, just this and maybe one or two other things is all I hear. So, okay, so we have we normally pay $250.
That's what you have paid in 2016 and 15. There was nothing paid last year.
Oh, we didn't do it last year?
Well, Teresa had just left,
Oh.
so
Okay.
she would have been the one that would have prepared those in the past.
Well, I would certainly support the $200, percent of $200 this year.
You didn't want to do the same level we've done in the past at 250.
Well, it's not one of the choices on the sheet.
Well, I think that,
I mean, it doesn't even say other, so you handed me this sheet, so I'm assuming
Well-
you have to pick one of these.
250 or more.
or it says 200 or more, right, and I just,
Okay.
I'd make a motion to
Do the 250?
do the 250, correct?
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 okay. The consultants that are doing the pay plan study, they're looking at trying to schedule their initial meetings. And so they are coming out and they will spend they'll do site visits, so they'll meet with every department head, and they would like to meet with each one of you commissioners individually. And so they are going to be here on May 22nd and May 23rd. May 22nd, they should be here all day. May 23rd, they're trying to wrap up early afternoon, so they'll be here the morning that day. So, do you have a preference?
So you need
That's
a
a
time.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
And you need time as well, or just the day?
The day, and then when, you know, a general idea when you're available, because we have a lot of departments to schedule, so I just want to,
I could do AM either day, probably.
okay.
I'm at this point in time, either day, anytime throughout the day.
Okay.
Do you know when they would confirm that? Since that is so far out, I know I'll have stuff pop up.
I'm going to be trying to confirm it with all the departments, hopefully today or early tomorrow. And so once I have that set up with all the departments and kind of have things set, then I can let you know what your times will be.
Okay.
I did find out on that North Central Kansas Library Board that Kathy DeForest is the person who has served in the past. And they are going to, North Central Kansas Library folks are going to work on getting some nominees together for you, so, as you requested. And I never did find out from you all if you wanted that EPM person to come to have an agenda time, the one that wants to do that energy audit.
Energy for, refresh my memory on that.
For the building.
Mm-hmm. Right. I gave you that paper and you looked at it, and it doesn't matter to me. He keeps calling. Finally, we just gave him your phone number, Diane, so he'll probably be calling you, and after you speak with him, if it's something you're interested in, then let us know if we need to schedule.
Okay. So I'll wait to hear from him then.
Has there
Okay.
ever been one done, do you know?
Yes, I don't know. It's filed somewhere, and I don't know where
I was
at the
just wondering
moment.
if we'd had one done in the last 10 years or
Yes.
something.
Yeah, there was. This one, I think, I don't have that paper in front of me. It was particularly for the heating and air.
Right.
Yeah,
So.
okay.
Okay, so we won't need to do anything on that unless we hear from them.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Okay. The only other question that I had is, you had voted a few weeks ago to utilize the funds for the county administrator to go toward the radios. My question is that for everybody who's participating on the lease purchase, including the city fire, or is it only for, or excuse me, city law, or is it only for fire districts?
Only for fire is the way it was presented, is the way I presented it. It's just for the fire departments.
That's what I understood.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I know.
That's all you have?
It is.
You got here just in time.
Yeah.
We'll
Oh,
move-
Randy.
Not you. I'm talking Brian.
Is it okay if I confirm whether he could come on the 22nd or 23rd on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Randy, the HR consultants are coming to do site visits for the pay plan study.
Okay.
And they want to meet with, they're going to be meeting with every department head, but they want to meet with each commissioner individually on one of those dates.
Okay.
And that's a Tuesday or Wednesday. They'll be here all day on the Tuesday, the 22nd.
Just set up a time with,
I need to try to schedule that, so I'm just wondering what your availability is on those days. And if you need to tell me after. They'll be here all day on Tuesday and only in the morning on Wednesday.
probably on Tuesday, we'll try to
You
get
want
together
kinda
sometime.
later in
Around
the afternoon?
dinner, at dinner time or so. If they got any possibility around dinner?
You mean, is dinner, lunch?
Yeah, lunch,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, that's fine.
11:30, 12.
Sure.
You have anything else, Tina?
Nope.
Okay, so now Brian.
Darren.
Darren, I'm
Yep.
sorry, Darren. That was the mystery of Brian.
Good
I almost
morning.
to a pastor.
Huh?
I almost promoted you to a pastor.
Oh,
That was the pastor's name this morning, was Brian.
There'd be sometimes when that would be a good occupation to have. Maybe other times it wouldn't. Okay, so we opened bids a week ago now on this for the County Lake RV lot. You'll see they had some very high bids, very high bids. And then there was a couple that were under 100,000, but still nowhere near the 60 or so that we really were thinking where we were going to be. And I'll tell you why that is. It's all in line item number 7. If you look at Larson, those frost-free yard hydrants, we cut it back to where there's going to be 25 of them, and they're $1,000 a piece. Or if you look at Middle Creek, they bid $2,600. Or if you look at Nowak, $1,700. Ditch Diggers was $1,000. When I came to you guys and said that, did we want to make sure we were being correct in going through the state permit, and applying for that, because even though there was the one line that we were not replacing in the exact same location, and you guys said, yeah, let's do it right, make sure we do it right. So we turned all this stuff into the state. Well, when we got ready to put this thing out for bid, the state had not yet responded, and they'd had it about 6 weeks at that point. 2 weeks into the bidding process, they finally got some answers back to me. And they are now saying that due to the Safe Water Drinking Act of 2014, that there's a couple qualifications for frost-free yard hydrants that have to be met to make them potable water service hydrants. So instead of the $60, $70, $80 hydrant that you go to Orscheln's and buy or out here at Ace Hardware off the shelf and purchase, it's a $1,000 hydrant. And that's because they have to be certified for potable water. So my question back to them immediately was, why are you going to do this, or not why, but if you are going to do this to Marion County, are you going to continually do this across the board to every city and county and private that have yard hydrants that could be possible potable use hydrants? And their answer was yes, but I don't know how they're going to enforce it all. Because in essence what they're saying is that every yard hydrant that's not on a private residence, like if there's any down here in the park, or out at the reservoir, or in any city park, anywhere in the state, that somebody could potentially drink out of, they're going to have to meet these new requirements. There's not too many they're going to, and when some, you know, when the city of Hillsborough, city of Mary, city of Peabody, anybody goes and changes out a yard hydrant in their park, they're not going to think about doing it with one of these expensive hydrants. They're going to go to the hardware store, buy one off the shelf, and put it in. So, yes, we did the right thing by submitting for a permit, but yet at the same time, that's what's driven this. Because if you think about, instead of 25,000, I'm looking at ditch diggers. If you look at their bid, it's 86,000. If instead of 25,000 for those yard hydrants, it was 5,000 for the yard hydrants, all of a sudden the bid's 20,000 cheaper, and now we're at 66,000, which is basically right where we thought it was going to be.
Did you get a chance to look at these new hydrants? What is so fantastic about them?
Okay, so there's two issues with the new hydrants compared to our old standard yard hydrant. Number one is the materials used to manufacture them. If you have corrosive water at all, the existing hydrants can actually leach, and there's a higher amount of lead content in them since they're not certified for public use. So with acidic waters, you can actually leach some of that lead material into the drinking water, which could then potentially put the lead content over the public allowable lead content. The second issue is the fact that frost-free hydrants, because of what they are frost-free, what happens when you shut them off? All the water back drains into the ground, right? Okay? Which in the state of Kansas is not an issue. Some states that is, but in the state of Kansas, that part's not the issue. But if you have any of that water that stays setting there, and then, or if you have a high enough water table, as you go to open that hydrant, the reverse action can happen if there's water above that weep hole. It can actually suck that water that's setting in the ground back in the weep hole and out through the system. So the state of Kansas has also said no more weep hole type fixtures. Anything that has a weep hole, you can no longer use on a potable system. Which makes no sense because fire hydrants do the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
But they're not considered potable water use, so that's how we get around that. So there's two issues with the old style hydrants. So these new ones, one of the brands, I should have brought a picture of one. One of the ones, Woodford, is probably the most common one around here that if you go to most hardware stores, you can pick up a Woodford hydrant. They make one that, so you got a 1-inch shaft that goes clear to the bottom. Well, now on theirs, it's got about a 5-inch, probably 4 or 5-inch diameter can that is totally on the outside cylinder on the outside of that. So when you go to shut the hydrant off, and all that back drain goes into this can. It's a stainless steel can built around this thing. So all that back drain water goes into there. So it's got an extra check valve in it, and then it's also got a venturi tube so that when you go to open the hydrant back up, it reverse sucks all the water in that can as the first water that goes out the hydrant. So your back drain water stays contained, and then that's the first water out when you open it up. And so now my question to the manufacturers and to the state was, okay, now so you have this water that is sitting in there maybe 2 hours and maybe 2 months. That water's gone bad and stale.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a qualifier on all these hydrants, which nobody's ever going to do. All these manufacturers are putting a little qualifier on their hydrant saying you have to flush it for 3 minutes before use. Before you can use it for a bottle of water. Well, not anybody's going to...
3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Well, waste some water. Yeah.
So...
Oh, boy.
So here's to my question for the day. I think we have 2 avenues that I'd like to present, and maybe you guys got other ideas. I think there's some ways. I've talked to Josh, since he's with the Improvement District and kind of oversees a little bit of the system. The ideas I've talked to him a little bit. I got some other ideas we've kind of come up with here late last week over the weekend. to possibly do stuff just a little bit different and get away from this issue of the hydrants. One of those ideas is to make the RV, not the lake hall, the office of the house. We keep water to them year round, but to all the trailers and RVs, we could actually put in a system that doesn't use a frost-free hydrant, more just spigots, you know, direct pipe spigots, and then blow them out. So completely winterize that part of the system. So pick a date, whether it's October to April or something like that, completely blow those lines out. And that way there's no chance that they're going to freeze, and there's no chance that then we don't have to go with the expensive hydrants type thing. Because this issue is also going to come up as you continue to replace for the rest of those trailer houses after the mobile homes up there. So that's one option we'd like to look at. The other issue with these hydrants that we talked to, we think it's the experiment station in Colby, the K-State experiment station. Put a bunch of these hydrants in, and instead of 10 to 12 GPM out of a normal yard hydrant, they only get about 2 to 3 GPM, which won't be enough to support 2 mobile homes or 2 RVs. So we don't have a great answer that that's the right way to go. So I guess what I'm asking you today is that these bids here are good for 60 days, and they were open on the 26th of April, so we have until the 25th of June. And if you look at the dates, I put the dates right underneath. You can't see the bottom. Okay, yeah. You can see the dates that they have proposed to do the work. So like Middle Creek was start June 1st, finish July 15th. Well, if you look down at Ditch Diggers, they proposed not even to start till after Labor Day, because they said that way the campers are, we're not trying to fight camper use as much and everything. So if we either accepted Ditch Diggers today, but accepted them contingent upon getting the rest of this straightened out, then because they were far enough low that I think if we change out the hydrants, obviously they're still going to be the cheap one, because the hydrant price was the same as the next low. So no matter what we would do with that, they're still going to be the low. Or we can wait till closer till June 25th and do an acceptance. And before we would give any kind of noticeable to proceed or anything like that, I'd come back to you either way and we'd get approval on whatever we decided was the best route. So I guess what I'd like to do is go through this with Isaac and with Josh to make sure they both feel comfortable with whatever we come up with as the next right answer. Not only for this project, but that next step of replacing the rest of the trailer house going on down the line.
What I see happening with some of your trailer houses, some of them like to come up and turn on a spigot every once in a while through from October 1st to March 1st or something like that. They'll come up and they'll have it on for a while. But we could not do that with that other system.
If we went to that other system, we would not.
So we'd have to just flat put a new rule in that you're not going to have water.
There won't be any water there.
You wouldn't have no water from October 1st or whatever date you pick. So that's something that will affect the trailer house realm.
So the recommendation then is, of course, to go with the low bidder of Ditch Diggers based upon.
And because
the new
my recommendation is to go ahead and award the Ditch Diggers, but not sign their contract until we get, because we have that same 60 days to sign the contract. So we don't have to sign a contract with them until June 25th.
Okay.
But not sign a contract with them until I get your approval on what the final plan is really going to be, how we're going to. That gives us another 6 weeks here to iron out all the details with Isaac and Josh and you guys as to how we'd really want to proceed for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
But that way it locks us in with the person that was the low bid who can do the work for the price that we were really thinking on the rest of it.
Do I have a motion to go ahead and accept Ditch Diggers?
So moved.
Got a motion by Kent to accept Ditch Diggers for $86,059.50, based upon.
Contingent upon approval of any kind of hydrant rework that we want to do.
Right, okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Randy, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's why we'll start ironing out some details and figure out what's going to be the best for everybody.
Good.
Yeah, you're right. I hate to eliminate somebody being able to come up and
That's just
run a
something.
little water if they need it,
something we have to make that decision so that they know that coming next year that that's not gonna happen. I mean.
It's all EPA driven.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom
Yeah.
line, that's where it's really coming from. It's just KDHE happens to be the bad guy in the middle having to enforce it for the state of Kansas, but, I mean, these are EPA safe water rules.
Even if we stayed with the frost-free, you're telling us they've got to run it for a couple minutes.
Even with the new ones, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a worse option yet
Yeah.
to me, because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna do that.
No, exactly.
And then
You're
somebody will get sick from the old.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the stale water, and I know,
Yeah.
I know. It's, you're kind of in a,
Yeah, that's,
the other option we're trying to figure out, this one doesn't make a legal sense for you guys completely, but there are some places out there where we've seen to try to eliminate this issue, have gone and placed a little placard on their hydrants saying not for potable use.
right.
Well, then why are you hooking it up to your RV? Or these trailer houses? Yeah, that. And then you guys would be stuck putting up probably a bazillion little signs like that.
Yeah.
And then having to maintain those. So
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out the best long-term solution for you guys that really makes a lot of sense to the users and to the county. 'Cause-
Well,
and the thing is, like I said, you guys are far from the, I mean, there's a brand new RV park that has probably 200 stalls next to a truck stop out in southwest Kansas. The thing was built less than 2 years ago. It's got the exact same yard hydrants you guys have. And that was after the Safe Water Drinking Act of 2014. But because it's 100% private, they didn't have to have a KDG permit.
Right.
Crazy.
charge the government some more.
So, well, the thing in like that is, let's say somebody does get sick off of that at some point. They're gonna turn around and sue the facility. The facility's gonna lose at this point. I mean, big time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do my due diligence to protect you guys and protect the public while still making some economic sense out of this thing, so, because I don't want to get stuck with any higher bills, but yet I want to do it right. So,
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
I just have a question. So if they decided to do the winterization, do the non-frost free on this piece, could they later do on the RV, on the trailer houses, could they do the frost free ones? Or do they have to choose one or the other for the?
No, you're
So
asking
they
if we
could
could
do-
do a mix?
Yeah, because it might make sense to do the frost free on the trailers because the people use them during the cooler months sometimes. But
The biggest problem that I see with doing that, and I'm not saying that's not a good answer, and we're still trying to get some more data on finding another manufacturer that might have higher flow rates. Right now, there's 1 yard hydrant for every 2 trailers out there. With those lower flow rates, we're actually gonna have to go to 1 hydrant per 1 trailer. So these numbers you see up here for the 25, 16 of those are for the trailer. No, that's not right. Anyway, part of those are for the trailers. So if that's the case, maybe it's only 8, because there's
You'd have
16
to
trailers.
add-
That's what it is.
you'd have to
We'd
add
have to go
that.
from 8 on the trailers to 16 on the trailers, so at 1,000 per, basically you're gonna say 1,000 per trailer that you're gonna have to do on this project. So does that make economic sense for what you guys charge in rent? In other words, if you want that truly as a break-even thing out there, you're gonna figure out over 5-10 years payback on that $1,000 hydrant for that 1 trailer.
What about if we went to a water meter pit?
Well, that's the other option that Josh and I talked about. What you're gonna have to do then is figure out that same meter pit, to put in a pit with a setter, a meter, all the valving and everything, you're up around $1,200 to $1,300 now. And then somebody's gonna have to keep track of the meters and the usage on the meters.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be, it's probably, that would be the improvement district probably. You know, you'd be a direct connect, so you would no longer sell water to those trailers. Those trailers would have a meter that gets read by the improvement, they get a bill from the improvement district. So, that's another option on down the road. Josh and I talked about that. But somebody would have to pay for the bill of the connection fees and putting it in and everything else too, that if you try putting that on the trailer owners, that could be a $3,000 or $4,000 bill. So, per trailer.
Yeah.
So, once again, I guess my goal is to figure out how to do this
Right.
safe and economical. So, trying to play with some options that
I'll be anxious to hear what you come up with.
we don't, the suck back water in a frost-free hydrant is not an issue around here, especially there, because we don't have high groundwater and it drains well. It's really for those areas of the state that are swampy or sandy, that, you know, that water can get sucked back.
Do you have anything else, Darren?
Today's just Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
very
lot.
much. Thank you.
I'll keep you updated.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right.
I'll get you those, the original bid packs
Great.
back.
Thank you. Is Susan out in the hallway? Is Susan out
There's
there?
nobody else sitting here.
I don't believe she.
Well, we had allowed a little bit more time for Darren, so you're 20
Way
minutes early.
ahead. Yeah, again. Wow. So, we have 20 minutes. Unless we can get Susan to come in, or I wonder if Rebecca would be available. We could, since she's out of
I
town,
can
well,
see.
maybe.
Sure. Or did you want to do your commission discussion?
No.
Okay.
That,
You caught me at a good time.
well, good deal.
Excuse me, right
You're
here.
fine. I wouldn't want to stand between a man and his coffee.
Okay, Rebecca, you have your quarterly report.
All right, things are sailing along in the deeds office. We're doing quite a bit more wind energy things, a lot of different types of things rather than leases. Now they're getting everything sorted out so they can do what they need to do. We're doing some stuff regarding banks and bifurcations and all kinds of interesting things. In May last year, I went to the North Central Kansas District Register of Deeds Association meeting, and in June I was going to the annual seminar. One of the big things that's coming down the pipe right now is predictable fees. I mentioned that a little bit the last time I was here. And when legislature did away with mortgage registration fees, the Register of Deeds Association didn't really have much to do with that. It kind of came upon us, and that's what we got. So the Register of Deeds Association and the Kansas Land Title Association have been working closely together for quite some time in order to establish some predictable fees that don't take away a lot of the income that the Register of Deeds brought in. It will be much simpler, and it will be what they call predictable, so that if it's a mortgage, whether it's 1 page or 20 pages, it will be the same fee. And then most every other kind of document will have a set fee different from mortgage. Of course, you know, what starts out in legislature may not be what comes out. And so I can't give you any exact fact and figures, but ROD and Kansas Land Title have worked together, so hopefully when it gets to legislature, it will be something that will be agreed upon, something that will be good for everyone. That's all I have to say.
That's all you have to say?
That's right.
Okay. Anybody have
Thank
any
you.
questions for her?
Oh, I hope
Okay.
it's as easy as you say it is, but I don't.
Well, on paper, it looks good.
Does it? Huh?
And this is something that is really becoming effective nationwide. PREA, which is the Property Records Industry Association, and the American Land Title Association are both really pushing this. And of course, the big banks on the different coasts and everything would like to say, okay, if I'm filing a mortgage in Kansas, it's going to be exactly this amount. The other thing that they're hoping to do with predictable fees is things like the tech fund and Heritage Trust Fund will be built into those fees. So it won't be an additional fee per page. And the way ROD and Kansas Land Title came up with these figures, they sent out a survey to all of the different counties, and about 70% of the counties responded. And so they took those figures, and there was a genius, and I think it was Douglas County, who set all of that up on spreadsheets and did all kinds of comparisons to the income we had before they did away with reg fees and how things are now. And based on that, and then they also checked with every other state to find out what kind of fees were being taken for each different type of document. So they took all of that information and tried to come up with something that would work for Kansas. I'm with you, though. I hope it's as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want to pay the same as New York City pays.
It will be specific to Kansas. It will not be a nationwide fee
Okay.
at this point.
Okay, statewide.
Right. But that way, if one of the big banks out in California wants to file something in Marion County or Sedgwick County or Shawnee County, they'll know that regardless of what size paper it is or what size font it is, how many legals, it would be the same fee. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You have a good day. Thank you. Okay, so we're still way ahead.
Okay, well, we've called Susan, so she
may be here soon.
I think so.
Good.
We periodically already run into what would oftentimes, and I mentioned the last time, just that little sample memorandum.
Yeah.
Documents for review and actions to be taken by different departments, many of which have been delegated to them. The question becomes, as part of the discussion like with the health department, was whether you want to see all of those, like, for example, there's a memorandum of understanding that's been prepared by Harvey County's county councilor, and it's a misnomer called a shared employee, that there's an employee who will be in Marion County doing work for the county twice weekly, and that memorandum is fairly straightforward, and typically I think the presumption is that it may all be signed by, sorry?
She can't hear you. She can't.
Can't hear one word you've said so far.
Okay.
That mic doesn't really do any good either.
Well,
Yeah, where did the mic disappear to?
Well, I don't know. I always had problems with that mic as it was, but.
And I could solve it fairly easily too if I need to. Anyway, in terms of these kinds of documents that are prepared for, sang for a living for a long time, so I can project. When I review those and they're approved, then oftentimes they can be signed by the department head in these given circumstances. So when I talked to Deidre the other day, I said I would mention it to the commission this morning to see if, in terms of process and protocol, whether you would also like to see all those various documents, even if it's for informational purposes, before they're executed, or if there's a real strong preference generally in seeing all of those types of things. And that's an example of one. Obviously, things like that license agreement I mentioned last time for the signage between the hospital and the health department. We have that, we've already talked about it, but like an extended lease for planning and zoning, those kinds of various documents. In each and every instance, if you'd like them brought to you or at least provided to you, I can give them to Tina. She's probably seen many of them anyway, and have them provided to you as part of your packet. Or if they're really not something that's going to require your express approval or signature, whether you want to see those in every instance or not.
The extended lease, yeah, we need to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
As far as some of the documents in their business and what they do, and some sort of term of what they're doing, get it approved with you, they show us after it's all.
Good.
I personally like to see everything. I like to read everything. Sometimes in some of the things that you just take for granted, important little tidbits would be of value. So I would like to see everything.
Okay.
And I know some of it I would disregard, truly, most of it maybe, but I'd at least like the opportunity to see it.
Okay.
So.
Before execution or just for informational purposes?
Before execution,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. We can do that too, and just bring them in, and that way you've at least had a chance. If there's anything that raises a question or you need to weigh in on, I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be my preference.
I'm happy either way. I mean, on the things that we need to act on, we need to see those.
Yeah, obviously those.
Informational wise, I guess it would be fine to be able to look at that. Sometimes get looks a little cumbersome when your department head has the ability to handle that, but I'm okay with that.
Okay. Well, we'll start with just bringing them in that way, and if it's something that's a rush kind of an issue, we can take it up as it comes.
Sure. Sounds great.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you,
Did you want to continue?
That's it. That's really.
Okay.
Well, then Susan, you got a new seat.
I got a new seat.
Yes.
So I gave you a memo in your packets that just kind of told you a little bit about the tax sale, and I didn't know if you had any other questions or anything.
Kind of just an overview of everything that had happened. Yes, I read that.
Yeah.
I personally didn't have any questions on it.
Okay.
Pretty clear.
Okay.
Did you have any questions?
I'm just guessing that the 22 properties that were dismissed was because the taxes were paid.
Yeah, the taxes were paid for, and the costs that were assessed against each one, yeah.
Good. Perfect.
I am hearing complaints on time frame of not having a title.
And there was an issue that came up with a payment. Somebody came in to redeem their property off the tax sale, and I wanted to make sure the check cleared, and it did not. But so I was waiting until the check cleared, and we've collected all the money on that. And so the order, as soon as I got that clarified or by the treasurer's office, then I sent the motion, and now I'm just waiting. I think the order I'll have back from Judge Hornbaker this week, and Robin's doing the deeds.
So if somebody on 1 out of 50 properties has a bad check, it holds up the 50 properties?
I felt like it was necessary because I have to do a return on the sale, and I had to dismiss that out of the sale, and I felt like I needed to put that in there.
Well, that's what people don't understand, Susan, is
Right.
why one would hold up 50. Yeah, that's what I'm at, the
Yes,
question I'm asking.
that's, to me, you have to confirm the sale, and I have to do a sheriff's return, and I don't know about that property, and so that was why it did happen. I had some phone calls, and I tried to explain it to people. Most people seem to understand that, so.
I don't personally see a big issue with it myself. The process everything has a process. But I know people would be anxious to get it, but knowing that it's coming.
And I do understand their concern because they can't go onto the property till they feel like till they get the deed, and so, or the sale's been confirmed, but that should be done this week, so. If it hasn't been done already, so.
Good.
Anything else?
Is that all you have?
That's all I have?
You did have a question about when to start on another one?
Yeah, and that would be up to you to determine. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get the title work done, probably 2 months. And so whenever you're ready, just let me know, and I can present a resolution for Brad to take a look at to present to you.
So is there a reason why we would hold up?
Not that I could think of. Just in the past, you've held up because of wanting to complete one or because of the expense. And so as I told you before, I think when we do it a little bit more frequently, we're going to weed out a lot of properties, and it's going to make it much smaller and probably a lot smoother. But again, that would be whatever your preference is. So.
I'd say no reason to hold anything up.
I'd say start on it as soon as possible.
Okay, I'll get a resolution, and I'll. Can I get you to write your email down, Brad, so I can send
Yes,
it to you?
absolutely.
Here. How about if I get you to do it on my tab, and then
Okay.
I'll put it in. Thank you. And then if you're okay, in the past I've sent out a letter once I got the list from Janine. Is that okay with y'all if I send out the letter first? Just sometimes it gets some people moving and can kind of avoid you having to pay for the title work of the properties.
That sounds excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I have nothing else.
Okay.
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Do
a
you-
good day.
You too. Do you want me to go get Rebecca or?
She's already been
she's
here.
already
Oh,
been
wow, you guys are speedy.
We are
You
speaking.
go
Must
get
be
Bud.
you.
You go get Bud.
Yeah, Bud's next on the list.
We've already called him, so we'll see.
There it is.
Well, I tell you, I will say, I enjoyed very much going to Wichita this week. I always love going to those conferences. The amount of information that you get, the people you meet, the experiences in other counties are amazing, and they update laws all the time. And I just think it's awesome. I'll just take a minute because we have so much time. I have just a couple things that really stood out to me You probably know about the Lincoln County versus Nylander case that took place. That was fascinating. And we had one of the attorneys that was on the defense, Mr. David Cooper, did the presentation and went through all the ins and outs of that and what the repercussions of it were and how counties, because of that it went to the Supreme Court. Wasn't that a deal?
Well, and it also becomes a primer for what to do and not do in the next kind of circumstance.
Exactly, exactly. And it sets all kinds of precedents. And one of the things that really, well, several things out of that really stands out, not just the precedents, but I mean, yes, in every phase of how you pay people and how pay plans are affected, the whole 9 yards. And this is fascinating to me. I'll just read this right here. And this is on pay plans dictate all the pay rules. I didn't know that. So when counties have pay plans, and the pay plan does not specifically address bonuses, it's actually a felony for an elected official to take a bonus.
Yeah. Unless it's, it's either prohibited or authorized, and that's the first stepping point. And then from there, everything else flows from that, which was a little bit of a shock in terms of how that was primarily treated what they call dicta in the case, but it's still something that guides you through, and most people now treat that as an absolute.
Yeah, and they were telling us that we need to do that, and if the pay plan does not specifically say it, if it's silent, then as elected officials we need not take bonuses, period, or pay raises.
Did he also discuss how they define bonuses? It can be certain types of what we would often have previously referred to as reimbursement. In certain circumstances, if it's more than the absolute, if you can't establish, well, this is how much the mileage was in this, but it's just a lump sum that we pay, some counties, some governmental entities will just simply say, below a certain point, we don't require you to track that, we simply have, it's $50.
Can't do it.
Not unless you've authorized that bonus provision. So it has all kinds of little feelers out there that you have to be sure you account for based on how they did that.
Yeah, and this was amazing to me because I never knew that before.
Yeah. I never even thought of it before until I was reading through that case at the time.
Yeah. So anyway, that was, it's just like I said, it continually amazes me, everything that you learn. And so also, one of the other things that I learned is, when you're talking about executive session and coma, that was a big hot topic. I mean, we really went into detail on that. And you absolutely cannot have a third party in an executive session, and that includes the clerk, unless she's presenting something about her department. It's just amazing. And I was going to bring out, and also when we make motions, and I blundered it this morning, now they have it to where you actually have to say the motion in the minutes, has to be written word for word. You are allowed to leave out the ums and ahs, but otherwise you have to have the motion word for word, which I thought was, wow, that's pretty cumbersome actually, but with tape recorders it's easy to do.
Yeah, and they also, what they're giving you, and as they should, every time I've ever done one of those, you always do the belt and suspenders presentation. All else, you must do it this way. Is it done that way, candidly? No.
Sometimes not.
If the principal elements of the motion are developed in the written minutes, generally that still seems to be sustainable. But yes, I mean, there was that discussion, and they try now, especially after last year's legislative session in Kansas for both counties as well as municipalities, because it had become so lax that they have established, you're going into an executive session, the two-part process that you go ahead and state when you're doing it in terms of the exception and the purpose. They've done the same thing with various motions. By the way, in order for us to know for historical purposes what was done, we want it word for word. Well, there's a lot of commentary on that, and when it went through the revisor's office, I don't know how you're ever going to completely control that short of what we do, which is to record those. And then the question becomes, okay, when you record those, are they a part of your official record, or are they only maintained long enough for, like when the county clerk is preparing things, or a city clerk, till they have accurately refined all that and put it into the minutes, which are your official record. So it becomes a protocol issue and how we establish all that.
Right. It was, like I say, you learn a lot, and I always love going to them. trying to think what else stood out to me. So much it's hard to go through. Of course, they had a lot of stuff on immigration and things like that, which was an eye-opener for me, but really, I don't think we get into too much of that, but it was very, very interesting. Well, let's see, I don't know, I guess Bud's here, so I'll stop at that and move on to Bud.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First thing on the agenda, you need to replace the cable on the crane down at the transfer station. Got hooked on the edge of the floor and got a burr put in it. I contacted 3 businesses, Nelson out of Wichita, Mackey and Sons out of Newton, and our cone crane out of Kansas City. Well, Mackey and Sons builds parts for cone cranes, so they couldn't do a bid. Nelson didn't put a bid, so cone cranes out of Kansas City is $4,600 for the replacement and the cable.
You're talking about installation?
Yeah, installation and everything for the parts and labor.
You say it got hooked on the floor on that jagged edge?
Yeah, on the edge.
So
They're watching it the best they can, but sometimes that thing flops over on them, and they try to bring it back easily, and you just
Weight?
Yes, the weight when they're packing the trailer. So anyway, and we did just get through having a little bit of a problem with the crane down there. We lost all power to it, and it happened to be in the, I don't know what you want to call it, but there's little bitty pieces, shims that you put in there that the wire screwed through, and then it runs in the track up there. Those went out. Instead of laying over, they popped out completely, so I don't know if we got a surge of power or something happened, but anyway, we had to get those replaced. And then the following day, we lost power on the up and down and the back and forth, so they come back and one of the connections was loose on the side of the unit, so they found that problem. But anyway, and then this was found when he was down fixing the first thing. He recommended that we should have it replaced, which 5 tons hanging on that thing, I don't want to break, and it's starting to fray pretty good. So anyway, I'd like to have that replaced. So.
So you said you had already called about the estimates of different places?
Yes,
or you did?
yes. I sent out emails, and the
So
one
good.
answered me back and said he couldn't put a bid in because they build parts for cone cranes, and if I was to have them do it, then I wouldn't contact the Kansas City part, and since they were already down and submitted a bid and stuff. So, and then Nelson out of Wichita, they never even got back to me. So I can only do what I can do.
I hear you. And with that not working properly, that's going to hinder you a little bit, isn't it?
Well, it eventually, if the cable breaks, we can't use it, so it should be best to get it replaced before it goes any further. So.
Is it a safety concern also?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of them things that they have to order they call it a rope. They have to order the rope in, and then when it gets here, it's usually a couple of weeks for that to come in. So it's best to get it going, get it coming, and go with that. So I just wanted to come with you. I wasn't going to do that on my own. I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it.
Well, I guess we got to get it fixed. I mean, can't let it go on.
No, we need to keep operating, So
Right.
it's one of them things that if it breaks, we're down, and then it'd be a couple weeks or so that we'd have to use one of Road and Bridge's rubber-tired hose and do that. So.
How many dollars have we spent on that crane in the last year or 2?
Well, we, what, 18,000 on that motor and gearbox and stuff last fall, and then we spent on the rope again.
Before that?
Yeah, before that, I don't know, a year or so before that. I don't know how much it's been since I've been here, Randy, that we've spent on that. So.
It seems like we spent a lot of money on
Yeah,
that.
I was almost to the point last Monday to come down, even though it wasn't on the agenda, to come down and say, hey, I need to buy a machine that we can use, instead of that thing. But anyway.
I mean, it's something to keep in mind. We don't know what the new place might look like yet, or anything
Right.
like that.
I mean, that could still be used, you know, if that's the recycle bin, because it won't be used as much as what it's used now, you know.
Right.
But still, you know, anyway, it's nothing from abuse, I can tell you that. The guys are watching it, you know, they're doing their best to, but just when that cable, when it goes and it gets hooked on something, you can't push it off when you got 5 tons laying on it. And, you know, you gotta pull it back the best you can and as easy as you can. So.
Most anything that's run by a cable or a chain, you just get wear and tear.
Right, right.
So, it's normal use, so.
Right. And I have some salary sheets here. I've took and raised my part-time guy up to a full-time job there. So I'd like to get that done. And then the one full-time, you want me to sign them first or last?
Well,
You
yeah, I
you
can look at them and make sure.
Okay, so you have, like you
That-
said, the new part-time help at the transfer station is Joseph Legg.
Yep, that's the new part-time.
And you're starting him off at $12 an hour.
Right,
Okay?
right.
And then you're gonna go from a part-time to a full-time equipment operator 1, Shannon Allen.
Yep.
This will be his 6-month raise.
No, this will
on
be a
his
start.
new Part-time to full-time.
He'll go
So
part-time to
now
full-time,
starting-
and then he'll get a 6 months and then a year.
Right, okay, so he will go, that's what I was saying, he will then
Yeah.
go to 6 months and a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going from $12.24 an hour to
That's,
to a salary, to
Right.
$2,267. Okay, I want to ask you something, because it just rings a bell. But I just learned something about in any department, can you have 2 salaried people if they're not in control of supervising employees?
He's not exempt. It's just the county pays a monthly wage for full-time people, with the exception of the sheriff and dispatch.
Okay, so
So-
going from $12.24 to a salary is
Right.
not,
It is a monthly amount that he's paid, but he is not exempt from overtime, and he would earn comp time if he works over a certain number of hours. That's how the majority of our county departments are paid.
okay. Just want to make sure I understand that right, because I just remember hearing that too. Was I kind of on the right track, that that would be maybe a true scenario?
Yes, and in certain circumstances, you will be required to supervise a certain number of people in order to qualify for salary basis. But what Tina's just outlining does not create that kind of an issue for you.
Okay. So then we have Douglas Hanson. He is going from $2,362 to $2,486, and he's promoted to equipment operator 2.
right.
Same situation, I assume, there. There you go. Did you get these?
And then we finally got started spraying. The wind died down enough, and we've done bare ground around all the buildings in town here that we're responsible for. We've done the Peabody shop area, we did Pilsen, and we're gonna get started on the guardrails. And in the process of doing that, we're gonna start looking out for noxious weeds in our ditches. Johnson grass is starting to get up there a little ways, and that's the biggest one. But musk thistle, we don't worry about spraying them. We chop them in our ditches, and then I've got a place I need to go spray on private to get that taken care of. Just we were waiting for a rain, and we finally got it, and now we're waiting for the wind to let us be able to get in there and do it. And we got our stormwater plan completed for the transfer station. Cobb Valley got that done, got it to me, and I'm getting it signed and mailed off today. So we're good on that. And recycling, I'm in the process of doing that right now. But that's basically all I have for you guys today, unless you got something.
No, I don't have anything else. You have anything else? Then I guess that's it.
Oh, and they're gonna, Cobb Valley's gonna come and try to get a survey crew to this week down here to start surveying down at the old transfer station and get to rolling on that. So
I was gonna
good.
say, I'm sure hoping to get to rolling on
Yes,
that.
yes,
I'd like to get that, something moving on it.
right. So anyway, he's been in contact with me, and I told him, I said, well, you know, we'll do what we can to help them out, you know, if they got any questions and stuff, so.
Perfect.
Thank you both.
You want me to sign this stuff?
Yeah,
Get it.
I can send them and then give them that.
Well, we kind of cleaned out this agenda pretty quick today. We're way ahead of time, which is a good thing. So the next thing on the agenda, are you done then?
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda then is the discussion for the EMS stations. And I put this again on the agenda, and I wanted to discuss going forward what the thoughts are of the commission. I've been hearing rumbles of Peabody Station, and I know, Randy, that is your desire. That is not my desire. I don't know where Mr. Becker stands on that, and I say it's not my desire because I don't see the justification, the need, nor the, and the cost involved to me is just out of sight. So the reason I wanted to know because I hear, like I say, the rumblings, and I think it's better served to the people if they just know up front what the thoughts are of the commission. Secondly, if it is in fact the desire of the commission to proceed with a full-time station down in Peabody, that with this being an election year, perhaps it would be wiser to put it on the ballot to see what the people would say, because as I calculated, with our past history of what happened as we built the Marion Station and the Hillsborough Station, it does jump the budget anywhere between $300,000 to $350,000 to $400,000 a year. That's quite an expense. In Peabody particularly, and I'm going back through the calls that Peabody makes, they make on it, they're pretty consistent with 20, 22 calls a month. In my opinion, financially speaking, that certainly does not justify a full-time station. That would come up to somewhere in the neighborhood, let's just say you had $450,000, which is a conservative figure, quite frankly, $450,000 to start a new station down there. That would come roughly to anywhere between $1,700 to $2,200 a call. And with our two stations centrally located in Marion, I just think that my opinion and my stance on it is that we need to maybe just squash those thoughts and ideas and maybe enhance, if we need to, the stations that we already have. Because I keep hearing building a service, and I think we've done fabulous with the two stations that we have. Maybe we still need to do a little tweaking there or something like that. And I always bring this up before the commission, and I did it again just this past week when I was down in Wichita, talked to several counties about their EMS services. And it's amazing to me how other counties just do not have the same number of stations that we have. In fact, most of them have less, and they have by far more population. Their budgets are less than the one I'm going to bring up right now. Of course, is Stewart County, which is not our neighbor, but they have 22,000 some population. They have an annual EMS budget of $600,000, and they have one station. And they even service the panhandle of Oklahoma. They're very proud of their station, not only being the service it provides, the response times, they're very proud of that. So that comes right under how it's just managed. And I'm just thinking that really for our county of 12,000, I used to always say 12,500, but I think the new census polls are 12,100 in our county. We have 2 full-time stations. To go to 3, I think is just not being very good stewards of taxpayer money. And so therefore, that's why I say, if that is the desire of the commission, I would like to see it go to the ballot. I just think that's not something that the commission should do on its own. So you're frowning there.
I'm not frowning, you were talking of $450,000 to establish a new station.
Absolutely, because you need, what, to do a 24-hour service. We have 6 people, I think, per station. Most of them are, well, there's several of them that would be paramedics. Ed likes to have paramedics, and they make $50,000, $55,000 a year. So now, of course, you have some AMTs and so on that make right around 48, 40, whatever it is. So even in salaries alone, let's just take 6 people at 50, 55,000. Right there, you've already got over $300,000 just in salaries. It doesn't include the building, it doesn't include equipment, it doesn't include supplies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you could see where that could easily go. And I can show you right here in our taxes, right here, what we went on our own. We jumped up at a minimum. When we went in 2017, we went up $299,119 when we went from 2017 to 2018.
Right.
Right there. And at that time, I will also say at that time that these figures right here, we were primarily EMTs and AMTs. We brought on tremendous amount, or a lot more amount, of paramedics in the last year than we've ever had. And then, of course, you're going to have the need for more training, etc. So, I mean, you can see where the cost is. I'm just going to say, I would think safely to say between $400,000, $450,000 at least to establish. And again, I go back to say for the number of calls, I don't see the justification in it. I just think it would be foolish for us to put a full-time station down there. I think, you know, as far as services are concerned, the same way with the northern part of the county. Other than our volunteers, you know, we have the centrally located stations, which is awesome as far as going north and south. And east and west, we have pretty much the same. We have very good coverage. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know, you know, I know Randy would like to have a little bit of expanded service down there. And, you know, I on the top of my mind, I don't even know the facility that we're using right now, and what does our director, I mean, does he feel like that we have adequate coverage at Peabody at this point in time? Have to keep in mind, we could lose the Hillsborough station anytime.
We could lose any one of them at
Sure.
any time.
Well, we own this one.
Oh, you're saying we could, well, we would just look for another place. I mean, yeah, we might lose, but we were faced with that
Sure,
here.
but I mean,
you're not going
we'd
to
be
lose the
facing,
station.
but we don't know what, you know, the cost is going to be to relocate from where we're at to another place in Hillsborough. Maybe more, maybe less.
Well, that
We'd have to find an adequate location, but I mean, that's something that is on the horizon because that building is going to be sold at some point in time.
But that's a different issue. That's an entirely different issue. We will take care of that when the time comes. I'm saying the expansion. And I realize that Randy would like it. And I realize that Ed would probably like it, but I don't think that's the right question to ask. I'm asking, is it a reasonable thing for the commission to do? Is it a reasonable expense of taxpayer money? Is it a service that justifies that kind of money when we already have established? I would rather take, if we lose the building over in Hillsborough, if we don't spend $400,000 down in Peabody and we lose the building over in Hillsborough, we would have money then to do what we had to do. So I'm just saying that. Now I know Randy wants to chime in, so I'm going to let you go ahead and chime in, Randy.
I really, you know, I don't think that you understand the history of what all's going on. Matter of fact, I know you don't. In the last year, you don't want to go talk to our director and see how he wants to handle some of the things. So, you know, you're making some rash decisions here that's could be better
I haven't
handled.
made any decision yet.
Well, it's your decision that you want to do away with Peabody, okay? You just
I didn't
stated
say
it.
that.
Yes, you did. You just stated it. You don't want no decision. You don't want no service down there. And that's just about, you know.
I didn't say I didn't want any service. I want.
You don't want no
responsible
full-time service.
That's right. I
Right.
don't think
You don't want
justifies.
to do that just because I want it. I understand that.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
So
Pete's sake,
what I'm
no.
saying is we went into this to build a service And that's exactly what we need to do. And as Kent said, we don't have a building over there yet. We've missed some opportunities that went by for that. But again, then I guess to my voters down there, then I have to tell them that you guys will not receive any of the service that your tax dollars is paying for. Maybe they want to pull out and not pay
Randy,
for it.
that is such an outrageous statement for you to make. We
Well-
have 2 full-time services, and they're perfectly capable of going from one end of the county to another.
Well, so then let's station them one
And
down
what
south
about
and
your
one up north then.
volunteers? I mean, there are volunteers.
So,
So is up north. I'm not taking
It's-
anything away from one area that the other area. Where I live, I'm relied on our volunteers as well.
right.
So I'm not doing anything different from one end to the other. I'm talking about tax responsibility. I'm talking about a justification here.
We don't have, the reason why we have a director wanting to resign is because he didn't have enough help.
Oh.
So,
Okay, so here we go. It's always my fault. That's why he wants to resign, because I'm holding people financially responsible.
would you let me speak for once, or are you gonna, or just, can you sit still and shut up for once?
Well, you're exceedingly rude.
Well, I don't care, you're
Look at the
rude
camera
too.
and smile while you say that,
I'm just
please.
asking you, can you do that? Let me talk?
You talk funny, Randy.
Okay,
Go
so,
right ahead and say your piece.
okay. So, maybe asking that, maybe the people that we don't have to cover for shifts when the people are gone, maybe that's when you put your full-timers down there to fill shifts. That's what he's asked for. Or that's what he was doing when you threw a fit. So why, you know, what's wrong with that? He's doing his job. He's filling a service down there to keep for those people down there. He would do it at Tampa if that needed it. So, you know, you got to let the person director do their job. And they're more qualified than any of us sitting here, I can tell you that much. And so that's all we've asked for. We haven't asked for a full-time service. We're asking for, you know, when those people are, when you've got other people to take shifts and you got to work them somewhere, why not put them down in either north or south so they can fill the shifts so you have a service? That's what it's about, building a service for Marion County, not just Peabody, not just Marion, not just Hillsborough. And so that's what it's all part of. And we was long headed down this road before you come aboard. So, you know, it's sad to say that we have a person that was doing his job and gets hassled the way he's been hassled. So, you know, until we do that, I don't think it's fair for us to make that decision yet, where we're not going to put something down there. We're not going to put something up north. That's part of the job as we come along, as our people quit, resign, whatever. That's why Hillsborough and Marion both have full-time people, because their volunteers quit and resigned or health. That's the reason why these 2 towns have it as of today, because their volunteers quit. And so we're going to face that in both up north and down south, somewhere. And how are we going to face that? That's very true. How are we going to face that? And that's going to cost us some money, and there's no doubt about it. So.
Are you done now? Now I'll correct you. First off, we were never asked as a commission to do anything down in Peabody. This is something you and Ed are doing on your own. That day that I said something to Ed, you and him were already discussing a problem down in Peabody because, I don't know, between you and him, you already put one person to sit down there, which one person can't get call anyway, so I don't know why you did that, but that's not my point. So this was never brought before the commission. That's why I wanted it to come before the commission, so we could have a discussion about it. And I disagree with the fact that it's not. When you're talking taxpayer money, it is our decision. We don't have any directors or department heads that have free roam of the county to do whatever they want without going through the commission and without being responsible to the taxpayer. And I'm asking for the need. What justifies the need? 20 calls a month, Randy?
Would you go back and look at what the history of that has been?
I have.
No, you haven't.
Well, excuse
Can I
me.
make a suggestion?
Let him finish first, because he's really excited here.
No, you haven't. Go back and look at the history.
How do you know what I've done?
Go back and look at the years coming up to this. Just look at it.
Okay, so I have right here the 2 years, and this is Ed DeBeese's.
That's what I'm saying.
And second off, I don't even want to talk about Ed DeBeese's, so for you to bring him into this is not where I was going. I'm going with the need and the taxpayer money, and that is our responsibility. We are responsible to the taxpayer to justify the expenses. If it was a need, I'd be all for it, like there is in Hillsborough and Marion. The call rates in both of these communities are huge compared to.
Did you look at where those call rates, where some of those rates, where those calls go? Because we don't have service?
I don't know what you're talking,
Well-
what's your question?
No, it's not a question, it's a statement. Look at where the calls go for Hillsborough and Marion because we don't have service down there. Some of the calls from Marion, Hillsborough all go this way or they go north just because we don't have service.
Well, that's fine, they can go all over the county.
That's what I'm
That's why
saying.
we put them centrally located.
Before that, the Peabody service, when it was fully equipped, was within usually it was right in the same 5 or 6 calls within Marion and Hillsborough. The only reason why Marion and Hillsborough, yes they are, just look at your history. You don't have to look back.
I'm looking at the figures right now.
Not in the
I've
last
got
2 years.
2 years.
We've had people on board for the last year and a half to 2
So
years.
you're saying that if I go back 4 years or 5 years,
I'm
which we
saying-
have no documentation other than maybe I
Yes,
could
we
get
do
from the
have
police report,
documentation of it.
I could find out that maybe in Peabody, instead of 20 calls a month on an average, you had 40 or 50.
Yeah.
So what?
I'm not saying that many, I'm just saying
How
it
did
was-
it decline?
Huh?
What made it decline? What made it go from 40 to 50 down to 20?
Well, 2 of the main people went full-time working.
No, I'm talking calls.
That's
I'm talking the
exactly-
I think what's being said here, and if I understand right, is that if Peabody had a full-time staff, Hillsborough and Marion wouldn't be getting dispatched, and the numbers would generate a higher number
That's
of that.
exactly.
Is that what,
Yes.
what you're saying,
And
Randy?
that, they was always within the top. Marion Hillsborough creates numbers of calls because of the hospital, but Peabody was taking a lot of transfer calls because of the people we had. We had the only paramedics, and now we have, one of them was now is a doctor, Dr. Karen, who I'm talking about. You know, those 2 people spent and took a lot of calls in the last 5 to 10 years, where nobody else in Marion County could take the BLS transfers. That's the big ones, or no,
So-
ALS.
So what you're saying is sometimes there's not any staffing, and if a call went out from the southern part of the county that Peabody would have responded to, Hillsborough and Marion's going to it.
Yes.
That's what you're
Yes,
saying.
yeah.
But that was before we had the full-time staff.
No, that's since you've had your full-time
Since
staff.
you've had full-time
So it
staff.
makes your numbers for Marion and Hillsborough appear higher because
Yes,
they're
right.
responding
yeah.
for other agencies, other county. Parts of the county
It's
also, but-
distorting what Peabody
What?
would show if they had a full-time.
Correct. Well,
Can I make my suggestion?
Yes, make your suggestion.
Okay. A couple of years ago, when we didn't have a director or we were in transition, we did have a consultant that came out by the name of Terry David, and he did a study and he analyzed a whole lot of data.
Mhm.
And so my suggestion is maybe to have a work session with the board, review some of those things because there were suggestions given and a direction given. I don't think that his report and his recommendation was ever to maintain both a full-time and a volunteer service forever. It was more of, here is probably what you need to do as far as transitioning to a full-time service. And when he was talking to the board, he was talking about have 2 or 3 full-time stations within the county, and then all of your calls would be handled from those full-time. That's what his recommendations were. But he gave other possibilities
Yes.
too in that study, and so it might be helpful for the board to review that, maybe even, if you're having trouble agreeing on the direction that EMS should go, maybe get him back, or, to discuss and.
We had discussed that man before. I remember talking about that, and I do have a copy of his study. And I had
Okay.
spoken to him several times, actually, last year when we were going through budget time.
Well, there was a lot of that had some of the call volume over time. He had quite a bit of that, some of that information.
That's
in
right.
there.
And I know when I spoke to him, he was quite stunned about our budget anyway at that time. And he totally was opposed to several things that happened contrary to his plan, just in my conversation with him. And I remember bringing that up. But my point today is, I think because of that expense, and with the election coming up, this is a perfectly good time to put it on the ballot. Let the people decide. That would be the fair and the wise thing to do. the people are the ones, because it's going to raise the mill levy considerably, that kind of money. And I think the people are the ones that need to make the decision. I just think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, Mike, just one little thing about an election. If there isn't a statutory authority to place that type of a question on the ballot, which I don't believe there probably is, for just, if it's advisory only where you're just asking, do you want this or that, we cannot by law hold that along with the regular
It has to be
election.
a special
It would
election.
have to be a special election, and it would be an advisory. It would not be binding.
Right.
But we could not hold it with the current election. We could not hold it anytime that a regular election's going on by law. Now, you can do, like if you had a plan and you had a bond issue or a question that's authorized by statute, you could place a special question such as that on the ballot with your other things. But you cannot do an advisory election such as what this would be along with a regular election. So
it can't go that way
I
at all.
don't believe it
At all.
can,
I
no.
don't think so. It's a non-binding form of referendum, and typically those with the, unless there's something that I'm not aware of that has changed with the change in how we now sequence things. I don't know that you can put that with your regular election
I know
ballot.
you can't, because when we were, I have talked about it with the Secretary of State's office previously on another issue. And
Yeah.
it's-
It doesn't preclude you doing it, but you would do it separately, and then expense of that would be on the county to
Right.
do. And it would be not binding in nature, advisory only, so that you could get the
a
sense.
feedback of what,
Yeah, from
what the public
voters.
wants.
So that's basically the same thing that happened then when we put it on the ballot to hire an administrator. It would have been also an advisory type thing. And even though the voters voted no, the board could have come back and we could have went ahead and hired an administrator
Mhm.
anyway.
By
Mhm.
statute, you have several ways you can implement that position. You could do it by an election. You could
Yeah.
do it by a resolution. So,
Well, then that was a waste of money to do that.
That's, yeah, there's a
Oh, that's
pretty
right.
good cost to a special, but my feeling is, I think we need to either revisit this study or maybe try to get some updates on it. I mean, in the end, maybe it's a possibility to handle some of this internally without just a total big monetary expansion, hiring multiple more people.
and there are a lot of,
You know, maybe internally we can do something.
well, there are places that could help with a cost-benefit analysis. This might be, you know, you haven't had WSU come back. This could be an issue that they could help you with, because that's something that they specialize in. So if you're interested in doing that.
I mean, we're to the point where we can't justify any one of us saying, I'm right or I'm wrong.
Correct.
Yeah, we can look at the budget and say, yeah, we do not want to increase that budget. But maybe there's some other avenues that we can look at this.
And then maybe there's ways to
Right,
transition it to where you're not, it doesn't take such a large budget to operate.
right.
Because the model we're using right now is probably the most expensive possible, because you're doing the full-time, but you're keeping the volunteers also.
Right.
So there may be ways to streamline that, and maybe somebody with some expertise in leading you through that kind of a cost-benefit analysis that might be useful for you.
It seems like every move you make, you gotta do a survey, you gotta do a study, you gotta have some professional in here and spend some money to save some money. It's what it comes down to, right? Most every time. It's amazing.
None of us are professionals at any of these questions. We have to rely on some type of outside source.
And you know, I don't really mind, I'm not saying that I mind doing that. The only thing that I do mind is when we pay for those type of things and then we don't follow through. And we have a history of doing that too in certain things, so. And that's what really bothers me, is when we pay for, so I'm leery on doing that for that reason, for fear that we'll hear what they say and we don't like it. And so we disregard that amount of money that's just wasted. So, my only point bringing this on, and we'll conclude here pretty much, is I just really want the board involved in making this decision, and not just have something pop up in Peabody overnight, or on a period behind the scenes, because that's kind of where I got the feeling that we're going. And I just want everything to be transparent. This is another thing that the KAC, transparency, is very important. And I think we're somehow slipping on that. I really do. And so I'm trying to bring transparency back. And so any decision to be made, I think, needs to be done through the board. And I think, am I wrong in thinking that these type of expenses, the board should be involved in making these decisions?
Well, ultimately, if you're revamping a service such as that and a broad-based transition, certainly, you obviously are the ones who direct the tax dollars and where they go, and empower your department heads to make certain decisions. So sure,
Okay.
the discussion would be yours. I mean, it always falls to you. That's why you guys get the big dollars.
Thank you. That's what I thought. It's kind of, it's not necessarily just let the director or the supervisor or the department head run with it. We have to be involved in it. I know the only thing that I think what I learned, and correct me if I'm not, the only one that I learned that we really have no control over that department can run as wild as they want is the sheriff's department. Going back to that case.
Well, I don't think I want to ever have it go into the paper that they can run wild, but
well,
but they do have.
I'll redact that.
They have certain statutory empowerment. Yes, that is different. You're right in that regard.
Does that not affect all elected officials?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lynn County decision?
Yes.
Yes, it affects all. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just leave that where it is. Do you have any final comments?
Not on that, no.
Do you have any final comments?
Nope. The one I had I've covered. So.
Do you have any final comments?
Well, you seem good at picking on things, and I just don't understand the reasoning when you say you didn't understand putting a single person at that position. There was a driver and a person that could handle the back, so then that established the service, and that's all that was. Simple as that. I mean, it's establishing service, and if that's not what that man's supposed to do, then I guess the man don't know what he's doing.
And I guess I will follow up on that and say, why was that not brought before the board? Why did that happen behind the scenes? That's my question.
He did not ask me. I can guarantee you that. What I got involved in is when the fire department hid the TV remotes and all that kind of stuff's when I got involved in it.
Well, I can go back in some tapes that would kind of prove otherwise, but that's neither here nor there. So, but does anybody out in the public have any comments?
Well, I do. I just wish that when the commission's talking, instead of I noticed one of our commissioners has a tendency to say you, rather than I think you, or, I mean, that's kind of general. Instead of pointing fingers at somebody, it'd be nice to just say, this is what I think, instead of you. And I also think the commission should be more of a whole. It really bothered me when I read a letter from someone who was rescinding a resignation, that they were really happy that 2 of the commissioners were good to him, but 1 was a real jerk. I don't see that as a healing thing. I don't see that as something that makes the commission whole. I just think that's tearing the commission apart. And there'll always be that wedge, and if that's the way you guys want to play it, then so be it. But I think you guys should be working together for our tax dollars, your tax dollars, because this right now looks like kindergarten. I'm sorry, you guys aren't behaving as adults.
Thank you. Appreciate that comment. Anybody else have any comments? Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to say that in the over 2 years I've been covering this commission, I've noticed this same type of behavior, and that it usually is triggered by the very same person. And I too wish you would all act like adults and accomplish things together. Because as it is, all you're doing is arguing and accomplishing next to nothing. I'm very disappointed in the way this commission behaves, and that goes back to my beginning day here. Very disappointed.
I'm done now. Also don't like the way our MCC DC is running.
Oh, either.
Something's very screwy with that. very screwy. I don't like the way our last director decided to resign.
I agree, thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments?
No
Me.
transparency.
Oh, I'm sorry, I always miss that direction, sorry.
This one's directed at Randy. I want to ask him, are there no volunteers down there? Is that what's going on?
No, there's the same 4 or 5, or 6. There was, for the last 5 years, there's been about 6 to 8 volunteers. 2 of them has taken steady jobs.
Okay.
No, wait a minute, understatement, 3. One of them's over here as a jailer. 2 of them's taken full-time jobs. That has cut the service, that's why we have
3.
Huh?
You have 3 then?
About 3, and they're both, 2 of the 3 that I'm talking about is also either a jailer, or, not a jailer, he is in charge of the jail, or he's an officer,
he's
sheriff's
working.
officer. So, off of the just pure public, which has 1, we have 1. And he's on most of the calls with, and we have 1 that don't have full-time jobs. The rest, and then the other lady is with Flight Team, or she was with Flight Team. I think she's changed. She's at the Marion Hospital now. So we don't have anybody that's volunteer that's don't have a job. So you got to work around their job rotations.
So
And
has anybody tried to recruit anybody to go to classes? Is there any active classes going on
Yeah,
for
there's
EMTs?
classes. And I think there's 2. I don't know exactly how many's coming out of Peabody, but there's other towns bringing
Okay.
some too.
Well, like Tampa, I know, has probably lost one of their full-time volunteers because Jesse Bruner took a job, and, you know, that's kind of thrown them into a loop too.
And that happens, and that's exactly what's happened in Peabody the last 3 years. And that's why we're down, and that one person that's without a job, he goes most of the calls, drives the ambulance most of the calls. That's why Ed put a person down there to set with him, so that we had a service 8 hours or 10 hours, whatever that shift that person worked.
So when will the classes end, do you know? Just out of curiosity, because, you know, I think that might make a difference too. If we
Yes.
got some volunteers, some more volunteers down there.
I think the dates was end of June, maybe, July. I don't know when the class is over with that they're teaching.
Do you have, are they advertised in the
Just
paper?
curious.
No,
Classes?
they never advertise for EMS. I'm talking even just, we put it in for free.
I don't understand why we're not advertising. I mean, if we're really
Every
desirous-
county I've ever been in, they've advertised for EMS classes
Yeah.
that, because people would be interested, but I've
Yeah.
never
I
ever
think so,
seen it here.
too.
Have you?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I've never seen it advertised too. And you know, and I worked at the hospital with the people that,
It's almost like it's
you know,
picking and
gave the
choosing.
classes. And it was never ever really, the public didn't know about it. And I think there are more people that would probably try to if it was.
One or two.
You know, I really do. I think there's some more other things we can try.
Right.
Mhm. And there's a lot of undercurrent there too with volunteers, because I know of several volunteers who have been volunteers, who have been rejected to be volunteers.
Well,
here,
and in volunteering in a little town like this, not Wichita, there's a lot of problems with being a volunteer EMS. I've heard it from friends.
Mhm.
That you get in a major car wreck, where you might see that all the time in a Wichita situation, that's very traumatic. You know, most people here are taking a little person from one old home to another, but if you see what they saw at Highway 50, 5-10 years ago, where people are burning in cars, I mean, our EMS is not prepared for that. And it only happens once every 10, 15, 20 years, and that's tough.
Yeah,
I
it is
have to
tough.
correct you. It happens a little more than that, because my wife started, she did EMT for 14 years, and I was a driver for about 10, and then fire department for 30-some years. Yeah, you got to be prepared though. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be.
But it doesn't happen as often as
Well, true,
Wichita.
as a full-time.
And so it's harder on these volunteers, I think. You never know what you're gonna get.
Not going to deny that.
Is there any way some of them could possibly go right out in Wichita a few times?
To do
You
what?
know, something like that, right out on the
Riders,
ambulance?
riders.
Yeah,
They do.
yeah, and right out on the ambulance, because, I mean, like Larry, he's seen a lot being on the fire department and an EMT. And it does make a difference, because you can keep your head about you because you've seen things. and it does make a huge difference.
Mhm.
And then they come back and they sit down and they talk about it.
Mhm.
Because that always helped them to talk to each other. And, you know, that's kind of what I'm thinking if they could possibly write out or something.
Quite a few years ago, there was some rules changed about some of that, where you just can't take a person and go ride with a, say, an ambulance or a fire department, unless you're enrolled in a class and.
Well, that, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get that opportunity to do that.
But isn't part of the training, that's included in that?
EMTs, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that is a good thing for them to do, because you do see a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
might decide, I can't do this.
Right, you might decide you can't do
And
it,
I'm
but
sure,
that's
so
a
there's a
great
certain
time to
percentage that can't.
figure it out and, you know, and.
That has happened where somebody got involved and then said, hey, I can't do no more.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is already happening. I know there is wannabe volunteer in Hillsborough, and she is actually going to Hutchinson and getting her paramedic. And to get her ride time that she needs, she actually has to drive down to Sedgwick to get it, because there's none here available
Right.
for her. They won't let her ride, so she goes down to Sedgwick and she rides down there to get in her time. So
See,
they do provide it down there.
And, you know, I wondered if the EMTs can't ride out with them a little bit more. Because like I rode out with a police officer, I had to sign some papers,
Mhm.
but I rode out with a police officer. I was in the first Citizens Police Academy in Wichita.
Mhm.
And I got to ride out, and it was a whole new world when I was there at night.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think that maybe somebody needs to check into possibly let
Well,
them
actually,
ride out some.
I do know a little bit about that with, like you said, with Jesse Bruner and some of the volunteers and stuff up there, other ones too and stuff like that. We have actually, I want to not say a policy, but I'm going to say a policy set in our department about that, writing out how they handle that.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes the ambulance up there has to be taken off because they don't have anybody.
Right.
They call Larry, you know, and ask him, a lot of times, can you take call for a while so I can go somewhere? Because they don't get to go anywhere.
Mhm.
They are stuck there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, you know, they'll call Larry and say, in the morning, can you take call till 2 o'clock, you know, and he's, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, when he can, so.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. Do you have anything?
I don't.
Mr. Jan?
I'm not getting any
Yeah.
response from Rob. Kent had asked.
We can't do
me.
much about it, but I would like to
I was gonna ask
focus
Mr.
just a
Jantz
little bit
first.
on.
I'll
Go ahead.
get to you. Did you have anything else?
No, I do not. Thank you.
And then see, then do you have anything else? What would you like to say, Mr. Becker?
Well, I had texted Tina the other night to see if Rob could come over. Still a lot of problems with the radios and 911. A lot of frustration. I had an individual come to me Saturday morning and told me that active 911 was down this weekend, which is hard for me to believe, but they had a wreck over by Lost Springs. The only way anybody found out about it was the ones that had the response set up on their smartphone. Nothing was coming through the radio. The way I understand it, there is a dish that's out of alignment in the northern part of the county. The company that services that told them they would not come before Monday. Plus, all of the radios were coming up with, it said site trucking on it, like a private industry was interfering with signal or something, but we have a tremendous amount of frustration, and I don't know if it's Motorola, what's going on, but these problems are not getting addressed, and we're going to start losing some volunteer firefighters soon because there's a tremendous amount of frustration. You know, the old system was working, and I know we couldn't stay with the old system, but we've got a tremendous investment in this, and we're not getting. It appears to be that we're not getting answers to why we're having problems.
And I'll also add that we discussed that. We had
We
all
have.
of them here,
And-
they were going to go up and change the radios and so on and so forth. And I just talked to three people during the last 2 weeks. That hasn't even happened yet.
That's what I mean.
They haven't even come up and made that change, and they
this
don't know
is
if somebody's
important enough that
interfering. I don't know.
Some of these problems need to be addressed overnight, not next month. And if I'm not saying that the active 911 was down for the weekend. It's just what I heard. That was rumor. But if it was, that's a tremendous problem.
Kent, was this Saturday morning? I had a call Saturday morning. Was that when it was?
That's when I talked to this individual that had heard about the accident on, I believe it was Friday night.
Oh, maybe, okay, but I had a call Saturday morning.
Yeah, but he said that he wouldn't have known about it at all if he didn't have the response set up on his smartphone. That's the only way that the people up north knew about it. I mean, when you talk about a traffic accident, you're talking about life and death. I don't know that this was, but
I agree, it needs to be taken care of.
I don't know who do we get in to fix this? It seems like a Motorola's should be addressing it, but evidently they're not handling anything on a timely basis. And maybe they don't know what to do. I don't know, but if they don't, they need to find somebody that does.
Like I said, I thought we were working on that situation too when we had them here, what, a month and a half ago?
It's been over a month ago.
And at that time, they told me that they would have been working up with the fire people and the EMTs up north within 2-3 weeks. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and this individual told me if it doesn't change in the next month or two, he said, I'll quit. He says it's not worth it.
If this is the state antenna that we're talking about, we don't have no control of it. I'm just saying, if that's what this 800 system is supposed to be working off of, that's why we didn't have a tower or anything like that. It was supposed to be off of this tower out here by Almy. And what I'm getting at is, if we don't have no control of that tower, how do we go about getting some
Well, I mean, when you're talking about a 24/7 service, and a vendor's telling you we don't work on weekends,
yeah,
we've got a problem somewhere.
Well, that's a question I would have if it's a state tower.
Yeah, I don't know where this dish. They said there was a dish that was out of alignment. Well, gosh.
Yeah.
So what process do we need to do to get this moving? Could you recommend, or who do we contact to do
I
something?
know just enough to be
You
dangerous.
know, that's why that's why I asked if Rob could be here,
Yeah,
because you know he's kind of intimately involved.
I wonder if we could call him, see if he can come over and see.
Well, I have been in touch with him and I haven't heard back.
Okay.
So that's
Well,
why
he
I
may
went
be
to
gone, I
have to
don't
check
know.
my
Right.
email, see
But
if
it
he
was too
got
late
back.
when I found it on Saturday. Of course, can't get it on the agenda.
Right.
But it needs to be addressed because there's too much frustration out there.
I can call the department and see if he's in there now.
Yeah. Why don't you try that?
I've been
See
trying
if
to
he can
contact
come
him
over.
all morning.
If he'll come over, because explain to us what all happened, because I had a call, and he didn't give me all the details as much as what you had. And it was about
You know,
ambulances.
and the thing that really bothered me is we have active 911 that's down. I can see it being down for an hour. I can't see it being down for 48 hours or more.
With the old system, we had a local vendor that guy would come out night and day. I do know that.
Well, I mean, the vendor that's servicing this should have 24/7 service. 365. I mean, what are we paying for?
It's been a problem since day one. There's been a whole host of problems.
I wonder if they can't have some kind of backup system for that when something like that happens. Because, well, like we get, the weather warnings from the sheriff's office. Why couldn't they do it to that group? And if something like that happens, it automatically go to their phones. Just
Good point.
for a backup, if they could, if they can do that. I don't know if they can. But I get
Well,
all
I'm
the weather
guessing
stuff from them.
the backup was working since he got a response
Oh, okay.
on his phone.
Yeah.
But
Not
I don't know
everybody.
what percentage of our volunteer firemen have that
Capabilities.
on their phone. I'm sure quite a few do. But, we don't know that number.
Right.
But and still, the frustration of we're sitting in our own station and can't get a signal.
That's pathetic, absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, when you hear them, when they're working, you hear them, it's just like they're sitting beside you, and everything just super then. But when it's, can't get it solved.
My daughter is in Germany and FaceTime me. That's like more fun for us.
Hi. Hi, Henry. Well, no, I'm at the commission meeting, so there's all the commissioners. Well, no, they say hi.
The Gates.
Yeah. Oh, you hear that, Trace? Be Gates.
Oh, you're.
I've just heard it before.
There's our daughter. That's
Hello.
Tracy, and there's Henry. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Sorry.
Germany.
Oh, there he is.
Did you get a hold of him?
Yeah, he's,
Okay.
Okay, we're going outside real quick.
So in the
Thank you,
meantime, then I'll
guys.
say one other thing. I forgot about this. With all the activity that's going on up north with the wind trade, and they should soon start bringing in a lot of people, I understand 300-500 people is going to start coming in. Honestly, we don't have the infrastructure here to handle the meals, the lodging, and so on and so forth. So I have contacted Dickinson County, and I also contacted McPherson County to get tourism paperwork from them, like their flyers of motels, bed and breakfasts, restaurants. I'd like to include Marion in that, of course. And so I know Teresa had a storeroom of flyers of all kinds of services and motels and things that we offer, restaurants, whatever. And I'd like to know if I can get these pamphlets or literature or whatever it is we have and put them up there as well. I was asked if I could provide that. I'm going to pick them up from the other counties here by the end of the week. So if I could get some of this stuff to promote our restaurants and our motel rooms and
you can
things.
have what's over there. It's all, most of it's outdated.
It was-
Because there hasn't been anything recent.
That's fine.
Most
I
of
got
what
that.
we have, I think, is in this resource guide that's in the hallway. You know.
Okay, I would need quite a bit of them because, you know, with 400 or 500 people coming, you know, they're going to be.
If they're outdated, it'd be a good place to get rid of them. I
Well,
mean, because we
that's
haven't changed
true.
that much, surely.
That'd work.
Yeah.
But I would just say I would like to have something to help promote
Yeah.
what we have here to offer them. And so,
See no problem why you couldn't get them.
yeah,
They bring
so
in food
I'd like
trucks.
to pick them up by the end of the week and wherever I gotta go to get them.
I wonder if they bring in food trucks or something for
I
those
don't know.
people.
They're worried about it, quite frankly,
Crazy.
themselves because they just don't have the resource. So I said, I'll see what I can get, you know. So anyway,
Has
okay.
any of the wings start, or parts showed up yet?
So I haven't seen any of those yet.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
They're working on the interchanges,
Still a lot of-
intersections.
Still a lot of rumors flying though. Crazy rumors, bad
There was
county.
I noticed there was though some type of business that was advertising for help for food service. But it was a Wichita number. Must be some company that's planning on being there.
Being out here.
Well, howdy.
Hello.
Step up here. We have some questions for you.
Okay.
I think Mr. Becker wanted to ask you a question to confirm some things that he's heard over the weekend to start off with number one.
Okay. Yeah, can you update us on the radios? I
The tower.
I received a number of frustrations this weekend, and some of the things that were told me, I don't know if they're true or if they're rumor.
Okay,
Was active 911 actually down this weekend?
partially. The new next-gen 911 and the CAD system, we've been working to get the active 911 incorporated up and running in it. It's partially there. Some emails will go or text will go, some for some reason have not, and they're trying to figure out why.
Okay, I was told that there was do you know about a dish out of alignment?
There's the storm last week that went through the northern part of the county and up through Dickinson County, caused some damage to one of the towers up there in Dickinson County. The Marion Tower is working fine, so anything in the central part is hitting the Marion Tower portables and working just fine. The outline of Marion, Dickinson, McPherson, and Chase Towers are all four tied together for the way it's built. With Dickinson Tower being offline, everything in that area is having a difficulty communicating, so any radio that's trying to hit one of those other towers, because of the one being out, is not coming back to Marion. But if you're in the Marion, like central part of the county and dealing with the Marion Tower, you're good.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is those tires ours or that the state?
State. Actually, they're Attorney General's,
Okay.
who runs the program through the State Adjutant General's office. And so they're, in that sense, it's emergency services. And right now, there are 2 tower crews on the tower, and that was the problem. They couldn't be fixed from down low. They had to bring in tower crews to climb the tower. So that's why the delay in that. So they're in the process. They're actually there now, in place, working, climbing.
So it's not really a radio problem, it's
No,
a tower
not a
problem?
radio problem.
Not a radio problem at all, okay.
Not a radio problem at all.
Okay. Okay, because that's what
But,
we,
well, like I said, I'm still getting a lot of frustrated volunteers. And maybe the tower was the one that was causing the main concern, because they said that there was an accident up by Ramona Friday night, and one of them said the only way he knew anything about it was because he had the response set up on his smartphone. Nothing was coming through the radios.
And that I don't know, because that may have been working off the Dickinson Tower.
That's what I mean. This
Yeah.
this whole problem sounds like it's a northern, but I guess I'm a little concerned about a vendor that would.
Well, it's not the vendor, it's the state.
But I mean to
It's
send
the
out a
state.
crew. They're the ones that sent out.
It's the state.
So we have no control over that at all.
Correct. It's the state-owned tower and system, not the vendors, not us, it's
And not
nobody
the
but.
radio.
So the state will allow us to be without 911 service for multiple days.
I guess you can't prevent a storm
Wow.
and stuff like that,
Yeah.
can you?
The issue was with climbing the tower. You've got to get a crew in here,
Yeah.
because those are limited. There's not a lot of them. I don't know where they came from. So I don't know where they had to go to get that crew. It's no different than in the past when we'd lose a repeater up in one area. We might be down for a couple, 3 days without a repeater in one area of the county, before we could get parts. It's the same. It's not the radio, it's that system and that particular system that's the issue.
So then, are we doing anything to address the problems with the no signals in the stations? Or is that going to be up to each individual district?
I don't know what station it is that you're actually talking about.
Well, Tampa says they can't receive a signal in their station. Durham says they can't receive a signal if they're in the station.
I know Lincolnville was in the same boat, but they were in the old system as well because they had a mobile radio from the old system and an antenna in their station so that they could get signals. So this is nothing new in there. Like I had one fire chief tell me this morning, there's a couple of folks making a mountain out of a molehill on it. Yeah, that was from a fire
Well,
chief.
you know, from our side, we hear the frustrations. We don't hear that we like what's going on or
I've got
everything's
4 or
working
5
great.
departments that are just tickle pink and happy, and I've got a couple that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that's not the radio problem, that
No,
it was,
it's not-
because
not
when we
radio.
brought it forth, we thought that it was the radios that were failing, so,
Well,
That's
a
why.
combination of the radios and the
It's
tower.
The system.
so, yeah, I'm glad that
The
you
radios
clarified.
have never failed.
Okay.
They are not the problem.
So that was the reason why, and he showed me, I saw 2 other phones on the display. It said site trucking.
And that's what it's supposed to do. If it's on site trunking, they are hitting the Marion Tower.
See, I had no clue. And none of them knew.
And that's a training issue and a learning curve.
Well, you know, maybe that's one of our struggles, is the training and the learning.
Mine says site trunking right now. That means I'm hitting the Marion Tower direct.
Okay.
Which with that on there. I can-
TRUNK, right?
Yeah, so, you know, a layman like me looks at that and you're thinking, you got some private business on
Oh, I
here.
do see it, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Yeah.
But
Well, then it was working.
it was working, but the volunteers did not know that.
Oh, I can't hardly believe they wouldn't know that.
They had no clue what site trucking was. So I'm guessing that we need to,
The message was sent to the fire chief's secretary Friday about a radio problem. So we anticipated that it would be forwarded to the correct personnel. Apparently it may not have got forwarded, is what I understand. But it was sent to their secretary so that he could.
So is the training just pretty much departmentalized, or are we trying to do anything at the county?
We did originally, we trained on how to use the radio.
Yeah.
It's going to take time and effort to learn it.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like there's training issues, you know, and I understand how hard it is for these guys to all get together.
But they can be done locally if they're individual.
I appreciate you clarifying all that.
Thank you.
It was kind of scary what I heard him say.
Well,
I didn't have the phone call.
We're sending out, we're
Yeah.
talking right now with fire departments and EMS.
So, the situation with the accident, so the
Yeah,
ones in northern Marion County were only getting the response on their cell phone.
Okay, and that may have been that their radio was trying to hit the Dickinson Tower.
Trying to get that tower.
And so.
So the ones in northern Marion County?
Without being on site trunking, but you can lock it onto site trunking so that it stays there.
So if they'd have got onto site trunking,
Trunking, they would
then
have.
they'd have
Yes, they
received.
could have reached the Marion Tower, and I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay, so
Yes, they could have.
that's a training issue. But, you know, we hear the other end of it, nothing's working.
I do. I do too, and I've got.
So I don't know how we address training.
But I think we know, even when you started this, Rob, that you explained right off the get-go that if that tire goes down out here at Walney, that's our, isn't that the
That's
state?
our primary state.
That's our primary. What happens then if that goes down by a storm or something that we could be
If
out?
we lose that tower, we've got the tower trailer, that big tower trailer
Okay.
over Hillsborough.
Okay.
And we can set up, and it's got all of our, we put all of our frequencies in there, we can pull it up and use it. It would do no good in this instance because it's not our tower, it's
Yeah.
the other tower.
Okay.
If it was gonna be a long frame of time, we would pull out that tower trailer.
Okay.
The height of it is only 106 feet, so we would have somewhat, possibly some reduced, but we would, I think, would still be able to reach the other surrounding counties to continue on. So we've got that in place for that.
Either one of you
So
two
do
can see
we-
that yet?
So what do we do to direct the chiefs to make it a priority that everybody is comfortable with these radios? I guess that's the thing.
I think they're working on that, aren't they?
They're doing
They are.
some stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I can't direct them to do anything, and I know wouldn't presume to. They're working with TBS. They want some changes in the way the channels are located, and that's, you know, their preference. Some do, some don't, and they're working. I think Tampa had already sent some back and had them redone. So they're in a process in some way that they understand it. Very.
Good.
So everything that Motorola is responsible for, they're addressing.
And then some.
Good. So they've been up to Tampa then and they're working on those. That's good.
I believe Tampa, the way I understood it, they UPS'd them,
Oh, did they?
some of their radios.
I know they were waiting to get that
This was
done.
supposed to, this was in a process since January, February, and it was going nowhere. For whatever reason.
Sure.
And so we have tried to speed that up, and anyway, Tampa did it themselves.
Good.
It's,
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, they're taking the bull by the horn and trying to get
yeah,
something done.
it's not the other end. They weren't getting any dates set from here to do it, and they kept asking for dates, and it never did happen, so Tampa, you know.
Well, good.
And I think Peabody is doing nothing with theirs. They're happy. I take it back, Harvey County, they're gonna go to Harvey County, and they're putting something else in run one of their local areas. Other than that, they're not changing a thing. Local here is not changing anything. They weren't, but then they were told that they could improve one piece of it, so they're doing that. As far as the frequency, I don't think they're changing it. There's some unhappy, there's some happy.
Some in
There's a
between.
very vocal unhappy. From one or two that are just
Very, very unhappy.
I don't know what they want.
Our hope is that over time and additional training, these situations will become less frequent.
Yes. And we have a system there. I mean, we've had it before, but we lost our tower out here, and our whole county was down for anywhere from a few hours to a day and a half, before we could get this main tower up and running. It's extremely inconvenient, extremely difficult to work around, but we've had it. We've lost Lincolnville repeater, we've lost Ramona. And at one point or another, we've lost most every repeater at one time or another in the county, and had an area out for several hours to a day or so. It's not unheard of. It will probably happen again. It's just, the nature of sooner or later something's going to happen.
1976 is back in service.
That's Hillsborough talking. Hillsborough Fire. Communications.
I appreciate you coming over and clarifying that.
Yeah,
Always
thank you
like
for
the
taking time.
facts. The facts are my thing.
Like I said, we usually hear the frustration side and not the complimentary side. But, it's kind of distressing when somebody says, active 911's down.
Well, and there's some that want to use that as a primary means of communication. That is not what it's for, and we have repeatedly told them that that is not a primary means of communication. That is a secondary backup means of communication, because when the active 911 goes out, that's not even a true CAD or system. It's just a vendor out there that's created this thing that helps. There's nothing in the CAD with it. There's no confirmation to dispatch or anybody else that you received that information. There's no confirmation that you're coming or responding. So it just goes out blind. And that's why it's a secondary.
Let's talk about that just a second. Ken, explain what that is. That is a separate system. That's not on a radio.
That's not part of our CAD. That's not part of our radio system. That's just a standalone program that you can buy, put into your computer system, and tie it in with your CAD. The new active, or the new next-gen 911 and the new CAD system that were just installed, I mean, this has been a couple weeks of turmoil over there with enough AT&T and technicians in there and in and out of there for the past couple of weeks, trying to mesh everything together, and this is one piece that hasn't meshed yet. The active 911. Friday it was working. Some of the people were getting the text, some were not. We're working to figure out why that is, and it's still work in progress. But when it does come up, it will go out as a secondary only means of communication, not as a primary. Yeah,
What can
I'll
you
leave
say,
it there.
huh?
So actually, the secondary was working in the northern part of the county when the radio was not.
Parts of it may have been. Everybody may not have gotten the email.
Right.
The text.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know how.
This
pick and
person
choose to-
received it, but we don't know about others.
Correct. I can't guarantee, and that's why with the active 911, dispatch cannot guarantee that you received it. So they don't know whether you're coming or not. They don't have a response from you. So it really, if we rely on that to send it out, we're still going to page somebody else because we don't know who got it. If we page out for a fire department only on active 911, and it goes to them, and they get it, we don't know, we haven't heard a response, so we're gonna page out the next fire department because we don't know who's coming. We don't have a commitment from anybody.
And what should be the volunteers that Kent might be talking about? Do you have a policy that you want, Rob, that if they don't get a page on their radio and they get it over their phone, is there a policy set that you, for your dispatch, want for them to do at that time, where Kent says it was on active trunking? Should they have got on there and talked to the dispatch? Should they have talked to their fire, called their chief over their radio, or is there any active things that they should have done at that time?
Well, I don't know exactly what took place up there.
Right, and I don't either. I don't either.
You know, if you're getting the communication, then we presume that you're coming.
Yet you don't know that until
But we
somebody
don't know.
tells you that.
You know, when they do get into their truck or get into their, wherever they've got their communication at, let us know.
Yeah.
That you've got it, but that may be a time frame of several minutes where we're not waiting that long before we call the next crew.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the spot, that's coming right over.
Okay.
Thanks.
I just got off the phone with the tower folks just before I came over, so that was the latest.
And the greatest.
And there's two of them, two towers that we're doing, they're climbing right now.
Okay,
Thank you again.
Right.
it's good to know.
Okay. So since we went through everybody, are we ready to adjourn? Got a motion to adjourn by Randy. Do I have a second? Second by Ken. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.